Hey, welcome to Patchabilities. Uh, from wherever you're coming from, I am Julie Werzer. I'm your fearless host today, and I am going to show you how to put a flange on a project. What is a flange? A flange is this is not a this is no official Webster dictionary term uh, 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 description of flange. I can't even think of my words. Um, but a flange is just a little, I don't know, pizzazz, a little strip of fabric that you're going to add to into the seam. You're adding this into the seam of a project, and it's going to give it the appearance of a really narrow border, but you won't have the pain in the butt of trying to sew in a really narrow border. Like I'm talking half inch, so half or 3/4 inch. Okay, so with all that official terminology out of the way, let's dig into a flange. I think what I'll do is I'm first, can you grab me a, oh, let's do this. So let's show you what a finished flange is going to look like. So on this adorable gnome pillow, I've got this really cute little light blue, looks like a border, right? Well, that is not a border, that is a flange that has been sewn into the seam on the border of this pillow to give it the appearance of a nice little framed, uh, thin inner border. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do. All right, so now we're gonna take a peek here now. We're gonna look down on my machine. I'm gonna back up a little bit so it's not so bright. So I want to add a flange to this block right here, this cute gnome block. And you're seeing these, the pillow and this gnome block, these are in a brand spanking new pattern. It's got several gnomes in it. These have been machine embroidered onto our background fabric. I should stop and say, so I have trimmed this background to the size that I needed. This happens to be a 10.5-inch square. And now we're going to dig in. Oops, sorry, one step before we do that. So to prepare your flange, this was a, what did I cut this? 1.5 inch, I believe, 1.5 inch strip of fabric, folded and pressed in half lengthwise. So I have this just 3/4 inch wide, cute folded piece of fabric. So what we're going to do is we're going to match up the raw edge of your flange fabric with the raw edge of your block. And we're going to get a nice view here. Yeah. Okay, so you're going to sew this on using, I'm going to begin by matching my cutoff edge of my flange here on the end with the raw edge of my block. I'm going to lay this on here like I'm going to sew a typical seam, only I'm only going to sew just 1/8 of an inch of a seam allowance on this. We're going to sew down one side. Now I have not pre-cut the length of my flange because I just didn't want to, and I'm going to show you a little trick while I'm doing it. So when I'm starting to get close to the end of my block or my fabric piece, how do I know where to cut this top piece of fabric? Well, if you press it back so that your fold is right on matching the raw edge of your fabric there, and then take your scissors, trim that off. Look at there. It's just perfect. So we're just trimming it to exactly the length that we need it here. Okay, so now I've gotten to the end of that first piece of flange. I'm just going to lift this up Pull out my project a smidge, get the rest of my flange piece. I'm going to, again, match up the raw edge, my raw end with the raw edge of my block, match up my raw edges of the flange with the raw edge of my underlying fabric. I'm going to set it back down here, and we're going to take off again with that 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I will give you a little hint here. The foot that I have on my sewing machine is my walking foot. You can use your regular quilting foot if you desire. However, I noticed that I was getting that that wave. When I'm sewing with my regular quilting foot, I'll just demonstrate here. It ends up kind of pushing your top layer of fabric ahead a little bit, and you end up with a wave, and your fabric can get just a little bit stretched and a little bit out of whack. So here I go. I'm going to trim off the end here of my flange so that it's matched up with the end of my block. So I'm continuing to go around my base block here and just be building my flange framing. So I'm going to show you here on this piece of fabric. This is my flange that has not been trimmed. I'm just going to demonstrate quickly. You do want to trim off the salvage end of your fabric before sewing it onto your background block. Okay. And so again, if I can show you here, we're laying it on top of your project, matching up your raw edges. That one did pull away just a smidge, but it's okay. It's going to get covered with your outer border when you go to sew that on. Okay, and now again, as I'm getting towards the end, I'm just going to press back my flange on top of itself, finger press it, and then trim it off. And I'm going to show you here. Can you see this? Can you see that I'm only using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance? Okay, and the fourth one. Fourth side. So again, we're just laying our flange on top of the other one there at the corner. And we're going to sew it all the way down. When we get done here, I'm going to show you what it will look like when we have the borders sewn on. Okay, here again, I'm going to come to the end, my fourth side here. So I'm just going to finger press that back on itself. Trim off the extra. And finish this off. Okay, so here we have our little gnome block with our flange sewn all the way around. I'm going to show you as just a quick, easy demonstration here. When you go to add your border on top of this, we're going to pretend that this is our border. You're going to lay your border strip right on top, matching up your raw edges, exactly as if you were sewing on a border without a flange. And only that time, when you sew on your borders, you're going to use 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that's how you put on a flange. And now I'm going to have Andy grab me a finished, no, grab me the other one, the yellow one, the yellow one. Okay, so I'm going to show you down here and then I'll hold it up. So as we can see, we had this beautiful green flange, and then I've put my borders on top of that. I can even turn it over for you so that you can see how your border is sewn at 1/4 inch seam allowance right on top of that. But is that flange not so much fun and so easy to use? That is so gorgeous, so easy to do. You can add that flange to anything, to any seam, and it'll really dress it up. And I think that's it. I'll hold this up as I sign off here if it's not in a glare. So maybe, sorry, it's glaring for you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you find this useful. 1.5 inches was what I cut my initial fabric strips for the flange. I pressed them in half the long lengthwise, and then I sewed them onto my background fabric using 1/8 inch seam allowance, and trim off your excess, and then proceed to put on any of your strips, your borders, whatever else you're putting on. And that's how you put on a flange. I hope this helps you tremendously, and I hope all your projects come out beautiful. Thank you so much for watching today, and catch us again here at Patchabilities. Thanks.